All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're not just going to sit around talking about artificial intelligence in some vague, theoretical way. No, we are getting right into the weeds to see exactly how it's fundamentally re-architecting global supply chains, taking those abstract algorithms and turning them into measurable operational foresight.
To really grasp why this matters right now, just look at the stakes. According to industry data from Retail News India, retailers are losing over $200 million every single year just from logistics inefficiencies. $200 million. That is a staggering amount of cash just evaporating because legacy systems simply cannot keep up with modern complexity. So here's our game plan for today. First, the AI logistics reality. Then, task 1, where we look at automating document flow. After that, task 2, making a regional sourcing decision, and finally, expanding the horizon.
Let's jump into section 1, the AI logistics reality. Look, we're living through an era of just unprecedented external volatility, right? Tariffs changing, geopolitical shifts, constant market disruptions. It's a lot. And companies like Takeda, Sanofi, and Nova, they're completely moving past the idea of just optimizing old, fragile methods. They know that tweaking a broken system just doesn't cut it anymore. Instead, they're leveraging AI to fundamentally rebuild from the ground up, shifting procurement from a reactive, administrative headache into a proactive, science-driven, strategic powerhouse. Okay, on to section 2. Task 1, automating document flow.
We're going to ground this first task in a totally real situation reported by Interfax Ukraine. Nova Post, which is a massive international logistics player, handled a mind-blowing 522 million shipments last year. To manage that insane scale, they're deploying AI agents to literally replace human employees for routine documentation checks, specifically verifying acts of completed work in their document management system.
Now, before we crunch the numbers, I want to clearly separate the factual source data from our assumed variables for this exercise. We know for fact they handled 522 million shipments, but for this educational task, let's assume that 10% of those shipments require a manual document check. We'll also assume each manual check takes a person exactly 3 minutes, and that the new AI agent instantly automates 80% of these specific checks. All right, here's your challenge. I want you to calculate the total annual labor hours saved by deploying this AI. Go ahead and pause the explainer, grab a calculator, and take a second to work out the math before we move on. Okay, let's trace the logic step by step. First up, we find the total number of documents needing checks. 10% of 522 million is 52.2 million documents. Next, we isolate the 80% that the AI can handle, which gives us 41.76 million automated documents. Multiply that by our assumed 3 minutes per document, and we get 125.28 million minutes saved. Finally, divide that by 60 to convert it straight into hours. And drum roll, the final calculated answer is 2,088,000 hours saved. Just think about that for a second. Over 2 million hours. That is a massive step function leap in value that completely redefines the company's operational capacity. That's pure human capital freed from administrative drag. The big takeaway here comes straight from Nova's head of AI, Daniil Maltsev. He champions what he calls an AI-first strategy. Doing this doesn't just look good on a spreadsheet, it literally eliminates operational friction. By letting an AI agent handle millions of routine verifications, human teams get to focus their energy on actual strategic problem-solving and handling the high-value exceptions. Let's keep the momentum going. Section 3. Task 2, regional sourcing decision. For this one, our real-world context comes from an Emerge report on AI in industrial procurement. Damian Nero, the head of data for U.S. Medical at Takeda Pharmaceuticals, points out that deglobalization isn't just a passing phase, it's a permanent shift. It is absolutely forcing companies to look at local redundancies rather than relying completely on fragile global routes, because as we all know, when a global supplier goes down, the penalties can be disastrous. Once again, let's draw a line between the source's strategic insight and the hypothetical variables we're using for this learning task. For the purpose of this problem, we'll assume an order volume of 100,000 units. Our assumed global supplier is cheaper at $10 a unit, but it carries a 20% risk of triggering a massive $2 million delay penalty. On the flip side, our assumed regional supplier has a higher base price at $12 a unit, but only a 5% risk of a much smaller $50,000 penalty. This right here is the ultimate managerial dilemma.
Procurement isn't just about hunting for the lowest unit price anymore. So, pause the explainer one more time. I want you to use expected value to calculate and compare the total expected cost for both options. Which one actually costs the company less when you factor in the financial risk of disruption?
All right, when you map out the math, the strategic choice is pretty clear. The global cost is the $1 million base price plus a $400,000 expected risk penalty, giving us $1.4 million total. The regional cost? That's a $1.2 million base price plus a tiny $2,500 expected risk penalty, totaling $1,202,500. So even with a higher base unit price, the regional supplier actually saves the company nearly $200,000 because it heavily buffers against those severe disruption penalties. The logistics takeaway here is really profound, and Sanofi's head of AI, Shreya Specker, summed it up perfectly. Volatility isn't just a crisis, it is an active design input. AI models and predictive analytics help you uncover these hidden cost savings that older, static procurement models completely miss, mostly because those old models only look at base prices and totally ignore the quantifiable cost of risk. Moving on to Section 4. Expanding the analytical horizon. Look, in the real world, a logistics team doesn't just solve a single math equation and call it a day. They'd immediately be hit with follow-up questions, like how does sudden demand spikes affect our new localized capacity? If a new tariff drops, does our math from task 2 suddenly flip upside down? How do you even measure AI return on investment beyond just counting hours saved? It just proves that adopting AI and localized supply chains is not a one-and-done fix. It's a continuous loop of data-driven, strategic decisions.
I want to leave you with a somewhat provocative thought regarding your own operations. Are you just slapping a digital Band-Aid on a broken system, or are you truly using AI to redesign it for resilience from the ground up? Because, as we've seen today, the companies that do the hard work of redesigning for resilience right now are the ones who will absolutely dominate the market tomorrow. And just to ensure complete transparency and educational integrity, here are the 4 industry publications we use to build today's explainer and ground our analytical tasks. You can see exactly where our source data came from. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive, and keep bringing that focus to your learning.